coming into this season as an NBA team, you really only had 3 teams in the whole league who you could pencil in as easy W's every single time you played them. And those teams were the Indiana Pacers, the San Antonio Spurs, and the Utah Jazz. Everyone else stood a chance at giving you at least a little bit of a challenge, but those 3 teams were blatantly tanking for Victor Wembanyama. They are not supposed to be winning basketball games. And yet, 2 weeks into the season, while the Indiana Pacers have lived up to those depressing expectations, the San Antonio Spurs and Utah Jazz are currently 5-2 and 6-2 respectively, with some wins against a bunch of pretty good teams. So what the heck is happening? Why aren't these teams tanking? And is this sustainable? First, let's start with the Utah Jazz, because I don't think many people really expected the guy who is leading the way for them to be doing as good as he has. It's not Colin Sexton. Most people, myself included, thought that Sexton was going to be this team's best player, and while he's been fine for them off the bench so far, they're not really giving him real minutes just yet, most likely because he is still coming back from his past injury and he's working himself into shape. Lauri Markkanen, however, has picked up right where he left off in Eurobasket this summer, and he looks like he might be a borderline all-star caliber player in the NBA. Lauri is currently averaging 23 points, 9 rebounds, a steal, and a block on 51% shooting from the field and 84% from the free throw line. Now, his 3-point percentage of 32% on 7 attempts a game is still pretty bad. He came into the league as a unicorn player. His shots never really been there consistently, but everything else, by far, this is the best we've ever seen of Lauri Markkanen. He's getting to the rim, he's finishing through contact, he's not getting to the free throw line a ton by any means, but he certainly looks more aggressive than he ever has before. He's just been really, really good at both getting to the basket and posting up. He looks a little bit stronger than before, but I think more of it than anything is just confidence. Lauri Markkanen in the last couple years has not been able to just be the guy on a team, and I think now that he's got that Eurobasket confidence under him, we saw what he could do there, we saw how good he could be as the dude. Now that he's getting the chance on an NBA team, he's just continuing what he was doing. He's not behind Zach LaVine. He's not behind everybody else in the Cavaliers, Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, etc. He is here on the Jazz where everybody else is pretty mediocre at basketball as far as NBA players go, and he is just absolutely going off. Defensively, he's better than he's ever been before as well. He had a phenomenal game against the Grizzlies the other day where he blocked Ja Morant twice. He's moving his feet better than before. He's holding his ground in the post better than he used to. He's got pretty good hands on the perimeter. He's always been a fairly agile guy, but he's just not he's slow-footed. He's one of those really tall dudes. I understand, as a tall white guy myself, it's hard to keep your feet up with someone who's like a foot shorter than you on the perimeter, but he is doing a pretty good job of it. And man, he just looks incredible, but it's not just been him here. I do need to give credit to some other players. Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley have both been very hot from 3. Kelly Olynyk has been on fire from everywhere. He's given you 13 points a game, 57% from 3, which is obviously going to fall down, and 54% from the field as well. You've essentially got 2 stretch bigs out here, and since Markkanen has been better defensively, this team's defense and rim protection is still pretty solid despite starting a starting backcourt of Markkanen and Kelly Olynyk. I would not have foreseen it coming myself, but here we are. They have been pretty dang solid. And Malik Beasley, he's been okay as well. He's shooting pretty well from the threes. He's scoring. He just kind of does his thing. Jared Vanderbilt has been playing pretty well. He gives you good defense offensively. He's not giving you a ton. He's only scoring 8 points a game, but he's a good rim finisher, and his main thing is defense. Once again, you've got a very good defensive player here, and a very tall defensive lineup. The Jazz are kind of running something similar to what the Cavs were last year, because in a way, Vanderbilt, Olynyk, and Markkanen are all guys you could see, in the right situation as a small ball center in the modern NBA, but instead, you've got them out here as a small forward, a power forward, and a center, despite none of them really being seen as guys who could be true centers, even half a decade ago. Colin Sexton off the bench once again really hasn't done too much yet, and he gives me the most hope for this team potentially continuing this into the end of the season, because when he gets going, you've got another really good scoring player out there who can go and get you some serious buckets, and presumably the Jazz are still going to try and trade Jordan Clarkson and Mike Conley sometime during the season. There's just no reason for them to keep these guys who are in their 30s on this team when they could get legitimate draft value out of them. Hopefully, anyway, that's what they're hoping for. But like I said, Colin Sexton could pick up a decent amount of the slack on offense if one or both of these players is to get traded. Now, there would certainly be a defensive loss if you were to swap out Conley with Colin Sexton. Conley has not been an amazing defender on the Jazz, but he's certainly better than Sexton is. But offensively, not too much would change, and they might even improve if you just swap one of them with a fully healthy Colin Sexton, because he looked great on offense the last time we saw him. The bigger issue with this team, though, there are two things. First of all, I don't trust their shooting. I think this team is shooting significantly too hot from three to start this year. Yes, they've been one of the best three-point shooting teams in the NBA the last couple seasons, but they're just shooting a little bit too good. They're currently first in the league in three-point attempts and 12th in percentage. I think both of those things are going to fall off as the season progresses. And the other thing is that they have won some very close games. Not all of their games have been close, not all of their wins, but two of their wins have come in overtime. And you've got a very young team like this that doesn't have a real established star player. I know I was saying Lauri Markkanen is kind of playing at an all-star level, and he is, but he's not some veteran star in this league who you want to constantly give to finish out. You want to constantly give the ball to him to finish out games. You know, he's not some kind of Kawhi Leonard or Jimmy Butler or LeBron or Curry, or, you know, you can name a bunch of different guys. I, at the very least, do not have that kind of faith in Markkanen just yet. So I would say with some very slight changes, this team could be 4-4 instead of 6-2. So while they might not finish as bad as expected, I certainly still don't see this team as one of the best teams in the entire NBA, and I do not view them as a playoff team. Meanwhile, in San Antonio, the Spurs are 5-2, and they have, unlike the Jazz, where they really had one breakout star guy and then a bunch of role players looking pretty good, this team has a bunch of breakout players, seemingly out of nowhere. You could predict a few of them. Doug McDermott has been really good for them off the bench. He's averaging 12 points a game. He's been absolutely on fire from three. But some of these guys in the starting lineup, I mean, Keldon Johnson, a lot of people thought he could be pretty good. Devin Vassell, people thought he could be pretty good. But it's one thing to sit there and say, oh yeah, this guy has potential, and another thing for that player to actually come out and play like a star. Keldon Johnson is putting up legitimate all-star numbers, 24 points a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, and he's averaging 46% from the field, 44% from three on 9 attempts a game, and 80% from the free throw line on 5 attempts. Where on earth did this dude come from? I think it was Hoop Venue who just made a video about how good this player could be, and I respect Hoop Venue's takes a lot, so I was like, oh wow, maybe this guy's a guy to, you know, keep an eye on. But oh my gosh, this dude really came out and he looks like a legitimate all-star, and he's got a borderline all-star teammate in Devin Vassell right next to him. Vassell is giving you 20 points, 5 and 5 right now. He's playing pretty good defense, and while his overall field goal percentage of 41% is not great, he needs to work on finishing better at the rim, he is also shooting 39% from three on 8 attempts a game. Neither of these guys were like amazing three-point shooters last year, and we're going to get to, once again, a similar issue as the Jazz. I don't think they're going to stay this hot from three. But man, oh man, if both of these players are legit great three-point shooters now, this team could be seriously scary. Trey Jones has been inconsistent so far to start this season, but he's really had his moments where he hits some big shots, makes some big layups, big three-pointer, stuff like that. Jakob Poeltl does exactly what you expect him to do. He's just a solid rim protector and defender. 14 points, 11 rebounds, 2 blocks a game. He's never going to do anything special for you. He's not a future star center, but as far as solid, role-playing, defensive big men go, Jakob Poeltl is about as good as it gets. He's a very good player. And Josh Richardson, a player who I really never expected to say anything good about again after he came to Philadelphia and played like absolute garbage as a Sixer. He's absolutely going off for the San Antonio Spurs right now. 48, 45, 100% shooting splits right now for 12 points a game. If he keeps lighting it up from three, he's a fantastic 3-and-D role player. Dude never really found his fit the last couple of years, but maybe he's finally got his spot in San Antonio. Honestly, good for him. Josh Primo just got cut for the team for reasons of being inappropriate and just not a great person, so that caught everyone by surprise, but even him getting out of there does not seem to have affected this team in the slightest. Like I said, Doug McDermott's been good off the bench, and while they don't have a ton of other depth outside of him, Zach Collins has given them some pretty decent minutes once again. Dude shooting really hot from three, although not on huge attempts, and this guy, Jeremy Sochan, not sure if I'm pronouncing it right, I apologize, Jeremy, but he's giving you 8 points a game, and he's not a shooter, but he's finishing quite well at the rim, just kind of fulfilling his role. This team is across the board, filled with young players. They want to win. I believe it was Vassell who said before the season, everyone's talking about this Wembanyama guy, but we're not here to lose, or something like that, and they're certainly playing like it. When the Sixers played this team, they play really hard. They pass the ball around really well. Popovich is still running his very selfless system there in San Antonio. They play hard on defense, and while the talent may not really be there, this team just plays really good basketball, and I think I may have underestimated how bad they were going to be. I predicted this to be the worst team in the Western Conference and maybe even in the league, but I think this team could really surprise some people. I don't think I can go far enough, however, to put them in as a playoff team. Like the Jazz, I do have some doubts. Once again, they're just shooting too hot from three. Two guys who have never really been much of a three-point shooter before this season are not going to continue to shoot significantly above league average on like 8 or 9 attempts a game. Same thing with Josh Richardson. He may be a decent three-point shooter, but he is not 45% from three on 6 attempts a game. It's just not who he is. He's not that good. So I think, similar to the Jazz, once their threes stop falling as much, they're really going to struggle. And I think that they won't have as much of an issue as Utah because they do have this really good pass-first system. These guys seem to be bought into it. They've got more players who I really do kind of trust defensively. They've got a lot of long, switchable wings, but they have really struggled with rim protection. Besides Jakob Hurtel, they don't really have anyone else who's even remotely a decent rim protector. They got Zach Collins on this team, but I mean, my opinion on Zach Collins is pretty low. He's a small ball 5 in an unfortunate situation. Like, you really don't want him to be your backup center, if you ask me. Certainly not if you need defense, and he's coming back from an injury anyway, so we got to see how well he holds up. This team is going to be fun to watch. I think they could sneakily push for the play-in tournament, if I'm being honest with you. We're only 2 weeks into the season, so maybe they'll end up still sucking by the end, but this team I have more faith in than the Jazz. I think they could be sneaky good. They are not going to be actively trying to tank, not with Pop and not with this roster, but I do think that by the end of the season, they will still be missing the play-in, and they will still be a lottery team, but they could have a really fun ride along the way, and I certainly intend to tune into more Spurs games than I thought I was going to when this season started.